To design, and today I'm going to have a look inside May 2011 and how we can use parenting and grouping to help us organise models. Okay, so what I've got prepared here is just three objects in the scene: a ball joint, an upper arm and a lower arm. And what we want to do is that so that when we rotate the arm, we can rotate each part as we want, and it's pivoting around the right places. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start moving these pivots around. Now, at the moment, this pivot point, let's just have a look at that. This pivot point for this object down here is down at the bottom corner. Not particularly useful place. If I rotate it at the moment, you can see the rotation is going all over the place. It's going to be very difficult to position that, and then I'll have to move it to try and make sure the animation is correct when I want to animate it. It's going to be a real nuisance for me. So first thing I need to do is move that. So if I press insert, I can start moving the pivot point around. There's a shortcut if you just want to center a pivot, by the way. Inside modify, you'll find center pivot. That's not what we want to do this time, but that shortcut is there if you want to just center, for example, a pivot point into the center of a model, which we can do in a minute. Actually, we'll do with a group in a minute. So what I'm going to do is position that so that it's in the center of the model, in the center of the model there. Just to make sure that I've got the right model, I'm just going to go to my 4 views and just check that I've got that pretty much centralized on that joint, so that when I rotate the object, so if I press insert again and go back to my rotation, but when I rotate the object, you can see it's rotating. That's not correct actually, is it? It needs to be in the center of the ball is where I want to rotate it from. So I'm going to press insert again, and I want to move that up. Sorry about that mistake. Move that up to the center of the ball, and then press insert, and then try that. And we can see that's now rotating nicely around that that ball pivot, if you like, that ball joint in the center there. So that's quite nice. But what happens if I pick up the ball and I want to rotate the ball? Well, that's fine, but that's rotating independently of the bottom arm, and I want that to change. So let's go back to our view with the outliner, this option down here, view with the outliner on it, and I want to parent so that this is the child of this. So this is the child of this ball, and this ball is the parent. Basically, the child has to go everywhere the parent goes. So any changes that I make to this will also affect this. So let's do that. Let's make the ball joint the parent of the upper arm, of the lower arm. So I'm going to drag that middle click and drag it up and let go over the ball joint, and you can see a plus sign appears and it disappears from the list. If you click on the plus sign, it comes back. You can see it's connected. So if I select that ball joint now, you can see that both objects get selected, and if I rotate it, then the rotation of the ball joint causes the rotation of the arm as well. Okay, so I can rotate the ball joint and I can rotate the lower arm separately if I need to. Alright, so I'm starting to build up connections that are going to be really useful when I'm animating this later on. So the last thing is this upper arm then. This upper arm, the pivot point is in, again, what you would think would be totally the wrong place. Let's go to insert. It's not actually that far out. We want to just move it slightly above here, so that it's pivoting from the same sort of place as if there was a ball joint on there as well. And press insert, and let's just double check that that view is good and that it's centralized reasonably accurately. Yep, not too bad at all. So I'll go back to this view here, yeah, so let's pick that up. So I'm ready, but again I've got this problem that actually I want it to be the parent of these two, so that when I move this arm, the ball joint has to follow. I don't want it to be the direct parent of this arm. Okay, I want it to be the parent of the ball joint. So I'm going to click on the ball joint this time, and I'm going to middle click, select, drag it over upper arm, and let go. Alright, so that's going to make my upper arm, and you can see that now when I rotate that, oh, just missed it. If I can pick up the upper arm by itself, I can rotate it, and then do the ball, and I can do the lower arm as well. So I've got 3 very useful pivots. I'm just missing that rotation there. I've got 3 very useful pivots set up and working for me now, and I can start animating that if I want to. So I suppose the last thing is actually it would be really useful if I had this, or had another arm that was similar, to have them in one group in the scene. And by pressing Ctrl and G, I can group objects together. So just undo that. If I select them all, press Ctrl G, then I get a new group. Now the useful thing about putting things in groups in particular is that a group comes with its own pivot point, and you can see that pivot point here is at the centre of the scene. Okay, so I've got a new pivot point that I can use. So I could, for example, centralise that pivot point, and then I've got a pivot which means I can rotate the whole arm irrespective of the combination that's in there, move it around in space, and it's not going to affect those connections that I've made between the joints themselves. So quite a useful little thing. Don't forget, double click and you can rename objects. It really helps to have things in groups with sensible names. So I've got arm, upper arm, ball joint and lower arm, and this means that if I pass the model to somebody else at some point, then they can see exactly how this is organised and the parent-child relationships between them. And that's where I'm going to leave parent-child relationships at the moment. Very useful stuff. They can be used in modelling and in animation. I suppose there's just one last thing that we could have a quick look at, and that is we can set up limit information for joints as well. So this is actually really useful. So in particular for the rotation, so let's go to this lower arm here, and the rotation for this, the limit information rotation, so this is inside the attribute editor. I can set the upper and lower limit, so if I rotate it round to here, you can see changing all those, and I can set that as is that going to be minimum or maximum? Maximum. So I can set those as the maximum. I could pass those over using the arrow buttons, and then I could move it around to the other side, and I can set those as the minimum. Okay, it's not quite right, but you'll get the general idea. And what that means is that it will not rotate beyond those points in those directions. So this helps stop people from breaking models, if you like, or rotating accidentally too far in one point of view when animating. And you can do that with translation, rotation and scale. So a nice little extra tip there. If you're ready to start animating, just to finish setting up your model before you start animating, go into the limit information for those joints that are important, and set up the limit information so it's accurate and correct, and that will save you making mistakes when animating. I hope that's been useful, and